Welcome to my next 100 Season 1 episode review video. Before I get into that, though, pretty important. If you haven't watched the first 8 episodes of the television series The 100, then it would be my recommendation that you don't watch this detailed review any further to avoid any potential spoilers. In full disclosure, I've already seen this show all the way through one time. I think it's a really solid show. However, it does fall off towards the end. So join me on the journey and let's discuss this mostly awesome and amazing show in the comments section. So with that said, this will be the 100 Season 1 Episode 8. The title of this episode is called Day Trip. And this will be my review reaction recap after just finishing rewatching the episode. We start in the dropship where Lincoln is guarded by Bellamy. And Bellamy seems to be contemplating something but is interrupted when Miller comes into the room. Miller questions if Bellamy has talked to the art yet, and Bellamy doesn't answer. Miller announces that he told Diggs' mother and the news as well as John's dad, and that he's going to talk to Roma's parents soon. Bellamy thanks him for talking to their parents and mentions he owes him. And then telling the parents their children are dead seems to take a toll on Miller because his attention is drawn to Lincoln and states he wishes he could get justice for those who died. Bellamy declares that they're not killing Lincoln. Out of anger, Miller walks up to Lincoln and makes a snide remark before smearing something on the side of Lincoln's face. Without warning, Lincoln headbutts Miller, knocking him to the ground. As Miller groans in pain, Bellamy does nothing but look up at Lincoln. Clark uses the camp's newly established video chat to attend a council meeting, and then Chancellor Jaha wants to know more about the Lincoln in hopes he can provide insight on how to survive the winter. Clark replies that they're doing everything they can to prepare for the winter. They've been gathering nuts and berries, curing meat, and digging for roots. Clark admits that they'll freeze before they starve, and then Marcus Kane believes he can help prevent that. Kane shows Clark coordinates of an old emergency aid depot that's not far from their landing site. Kane and Jaha explain that it should have supplies and that it can be used as a shelter for the 100 and the citizens of the Ark during the winter. And then Clark agrees that it's worth a shot. And then Diana Sidney believes that the kids should wait until the people of the Ark are on the ground. Jaha disagrees, stating that the 100 would die from exposure before relief arrives. He then asks for a moment alone with Clark. Jaha admits that everyone's proud of what the 100 have accomplished on Earth, especially Clark's mom, Abby. And Clark declares she doesn't want to talk about her, and Jaha tries to get Clark to forgive her mother. However, Clark doesn't agree with the decision her mother and Jaha made. Clark believes she'll never forgive her mother or Jaha for betraying and killing her father. And then Clark changes the subject to the kids who actually want to talk to their parents. Water has already started to freeze on the dropship chairs, and the 100 are using pieces of metal to chip and scrape away at the ice. Leaving the communications tent, Clark calls for Dax. When she can't find him, she turns to Monty and Jasper, who are sorting and eating nuts, and asks if they've seen him. Monty replies that he's on the meat crew. Spotting Dax, she calls out his name and announces he's up. And then Dax prepares to talk to his mother, only Commander Shumway, the man who gave Bellamy a gun to kill Chancellor Jaha, appears instead of the woman. When Dax asks where his mom is, Shumway explains he can see his mom after they have a little talk. He then asks Dax if he's alone, to which Dax responds with yes and questions why. And Shumway reveals that Dax was sent to prison for beating a man to death. Dax gets defensive and states the man stole from him, and then Shumway tells him to relax. Shumway reveals that he has a problem and Dax can help him fix it. Shumway can guarantee his mother a spot on the first dropship and that Dax a choice assignment when he's on the ground. In exchange, Shumway wants Dax to kill Bellamy Blake. Bellamy climbs down from the upper level to see Octavia still sitting nearby. Octavia informs him she is not moving until Bellamy lets her up to see him, referring to Lincoln. Agitated with another, the two siblings argue. Despite Octavia's attempts, Bellamy refuses and turns away, ending the conversation. However, Octavia isn't finished. She asks him why he cares if she ruined his life. Bellamy glances at her and comments that she knows he didn't mean it. And then Clark, unaware of Octavia and Bellamy's fight, walks in and calls for Bellamy. Bellamy snaps at Clark, telling her the answer is still no. He'll not talk to Jaha, and Clark informs him that's not why she's there. Instead, she explains that the ARC found some records that show an old emergency aid depot not far from where they are, and then Bellamy asks Clark what kind of supplies it will have, and Clark declares that the kind they might give them a chance to live through the winter. And then Clark mentions she's going to check it out and could use some backup, inviting Bellamy along, but only because she doesn't feel like being around anyone she actually likes. And then Bellamy smiles at her honestly and agrees to go with Clark. Clark leaves, taking one final look at his sister. Bellamy leaves to gather his things. Monty and Jasper are still cracking and sorting the nuts, and Jasper wonders out loud what Bellamy plans to do with the Lincoln. Monty glances over to the dropship to see Bellamy leaving and mentions that he doesn't want to think about it, and then Jasper continues on, fearing that the Lincoln's life and friends Lincoln's friends, I should say, will come looking for him. And then Monty playfully smacks Jasper and tells him to cheer up because by then they'll all be dead, and that's what's going to happen. And then he takes one of the nuts and eats it. He throws another at Jasper's open mouth, and then throw is successful, and the two celebrate with their secret handshake. Clark checks in on Finn, who is still recovering from the injuries sustained during Octavia's rescue, and Clark asks him how he's feeling, to which he replies weak and bored, but grateful to be alive. Clark mentions that if he wants to stay that way, he can rest. Raven jokes that she'll tie Finn down if she has to. An awkward silence fills the tent as the three avoid eye contact. While cleaning Finn's room, and Clark changes the subject and informs him she'll be out of camp for the day and asks Raven to change his bandages in a few hours. When asked where she's going, Clark explains she received a little assignment from the ARC and that it's nothing to worry about. Finn worries regardless and wants to go as well. Raven assures him that Clark is a big girl and can handle it. Before the conversation continues, Bellamy peeks his head into the tent, calling for Clark. A look of displeasure appears on Finn's face when he sees who Clark is leaving with. Clark gets up to leave, but before she does, she advises Raven to make sure he stays in bed. Bellamy begins packing large amounts of rations. Clark notices Bellamy's taking more than necessary for a day trip and comments, but he brushes her off by saying that a lot can happen in a day. She doesn't question him further. On the other side of the camp, Bellamy even notices Octavia outside the dropship. Octavia is outside long enough to see Bellamy and Clark leaving the camp. Dax, who has accepted Shumway's mission, follows Clark and Bellamy out of the camp with a hunting knife. Miller's told that Roma's parents are waiting for him on the radio. Octavia, who hasn't left the dropship, overhears this and stays hidden until Miller heads out. And leaving Lincoln unguarded, Octavia quickly climbs up the ladder and mentions they don't have a lot of time. She gives him water and apologizes for not visiting sooner. Octavia mentions her brother has kept her away and that he's a dick. And she realizes that Lincoln does understand English when he laughs at her declaration. Octavia begins cleaning him up. She blames herself for what happened to him, and then he informs her that his name is Lincoln, to which she introduces herself as Octavia. And then Octavia waits for him to respond, but when he doesn't, she asks why. He tells her it's not safe to talk. Octavia then mentions if it's not safe, then why tell her his name? He replies he wants her to remember him when he's dead. Octavia insists that he isn't going to die. Lincoln believes that his captivity can only end one way, with his death, and then Octavia refuses to believe that. She wants Lincoln to talk to her brother and the others. She asks Lincoln to tell them he's not the enemy, but Lincoln refuses because he sees himself as their enemy, and then their moment is ruined when Miller opens up the hatch. He tells Octavia to leave or Lincoln will be getting the beating he's been itching to give him, and then Octavia calms Miller down and then leaves. Clark mentions that the first dropship will be coming down soon and that Bellamy can't avoid Jaha forever, and then Bellamy comments that he can try. Reaching the coordinates, they see ruins and a large body of water. Clark mentions that the depot is supposed to be here somewhere, and then Bellamy says there has to be a door. Clark tries to convince Bellamy that maybe Jaha will be lenient, and Bellamy doesn't think that the Chancellor will forgive him and forget that he shot the man. Frustrated, Bellamy suggests they split up but stay within shouting distance. Bellamy ventures off in a search of the door. Unbeknownst to Clark or Bellamy, Dax lurks a good distance behind them. Octavia is still mad at Raven for torturing Lincoln. Raven won't apologize for doing what she had to do to save Finn. Octavia tries to hurt Raven by saying how awful it must be to realize that Finn's into somebody else. Raven refuses to fight with Octavia. However, after their encounter, Raven tries to reaffirm Finn's love for her by sleeping with him. And Bellamy finds something and begins to uncover it. While distracted, Dax begins his descent on Bellamy with his hunting knife. However, Clark shouts out, and this forces Dax back into hiding. Clark tells Bellamy that she found a door. Together, they're able to get it open and go inside to find supplies. As the two explore the depot, they quickly realize that the place is ruined and disgusting. They realize that the 100 and the people of the Ark can't live down there, and Clark believes that all the supplies were dispersed before the last of the bombs went off. Bellamy finds a box of glow sticks and begins lighting them. Meanwhile, Clark finds a box of full blankets. While Clark is happy they found something, Bellamy isn't. Bellamy opens up a metal barrel only to find it full of grease. Angry, Bellamy kicks the barrel over. After the barrel topples over, Bellamy discovers a bunch of assault rifles and ammunition that were inside. Monty and Jasper are in their tent. Monty is the first one to start feeling the effects of the nuts. Jasper mentions that Monty is acting weird and announces he has to pee. While trying to go to the bathroom, Jasper starts hallucinating that the grounders are there. Jasper yells for Octavia, warning her of the grounders that are inside the camp, but she doesn't see anything. Jasper doesn't seem to hear her and confesses that he loves her. When Octavia sees Jasper trying to eat one of the nuts, she realizes that Jasper's hallucinating because of them. Octavia calms him down and grabs a stick. She tells Jasper that the stick is an anti-grounder stick and that the grounders won't be able to see him if he holds it. Octavia comes up with a plan of her own and tells Jasper to stay where he is. Since Bellamy gave everyone orders to keep away from the grounder, Lincoln, she brings Miller a ration of the nuts as a peace offering in hopes that he will eat them. And then back at the supply depot, Bellamy raves on about how finding the rifle changes everything. Bellamy asks Clark if she's ready to be a badass as he eats the nuts. And then Clark, on the other hand, doesn't want to fight with Bellamy about bringing the rifles back to camp. She knows they need them, but doesn't mean that she has to like it. Bellamy insists on teaching Clark how to shoot. When he fixes Clark's stance, Bellamy notices how close he is to her and gets flustered. Bellamy shakes his head and then pulls away from Clark. Taking one of the rifles, Bellamy decides to demonstrate inside. After Bellamy pulls the trigger, he notices that some of the bullets are duds. Bellamy tells Clark to try hers. After she shoots the first time, she's amazed by the feeling and questions if she should feel horrible for feeling that way. Bellamy shakes his head, is smiling, and tells her to shoot again, but Clark doesn't want to waste the ammunition. Clark wants to discuss where to keep the rifles around camp and who has access to them, and Clark mentions Miller and how Bellamy must trust him. Bellamy tells her to keep Miller close because the others listen to him. Clark questions why she has to keep him close. She then questions Bellamy's odd behavior. Looking at Bellamy's pack, Clark realizes he's going to run and tries to convince Bellamy to stay, stating that Octavia needs him. Bellamy tells her Octavia hates him and she'll be fine. Bellamy explains that he doesn't want to die or get locked up like Lincoln for the rest of his life when Jaha comes down to Earth. Flustered, Bellamy tells Clark to keep shooting and leaves to go get some air. Bellamy starts to feel the effects of the nuts. At that point, Bellamy hallucinates Chancellor Jaha, confronting him along with the 320 people who were killed in the cooling, and Bellamy expresses guilt over his actions and their deaths. His guilt overwhelms him, and he tries to run from those who call him a murderer. Meanwhile, Clark tries to shoot through her weapon again, only to start her own hallucination down in the bunker. Clark envisions that she is back in her cell on the Ark along with her father, Jake Griffin. Everyone seems to be hallucinating except for Octavia. Octavia goes around camp collecting discarded clothing from other campers. Miller, who is guarding Lincoln, is seen outside the dropship talking to himself. Inside Finn and Raven's tent, Monty barges in wondering if the moon is there. Finn shouts at him to get out, only for Monty to look at him perplexed and then leave. Raven tells Finn to stay put and goes to figure out what's going on. And then Raven sees the whole camp acting crazy. Raven realizes something is wrong and then turns back to Finn and tells him to get out of here. And then in the depot, Clark is hugging her father. However, she pulls away and realizes that her father is not real. Jake tries to get her to forgive her mother. Clark breaks down over the growing pressure of everyone counting on her and over her torturing somebody. And then Jake tells Clark that she's doing the best she can. And Clark knows her father wants her to admit her mom did the best she could. When she says her mother doesn't deserve her forgiveness, her father tells her that forgiveness isn't about what people deserve. Clark is still reluctant, and then the hallucination changes. Jake calls her a crazy bitch. Clark is confused, but it is quickly revealed that in reality, Dax is standing behind her. He was the one who called her a crazy bitch, and then he hits her on the head and with one of the rifles and knocks her out. Octavia throws a pile of clothing down in front of Lincoln and then frees him. Lincoln is more worried about her safety than his freedom. When Lincoln mentions they will spot him, Octavia explains that everyone in the camp has seen things. He tells her that the nuts will wear off. Before he leaves, he leans down and kisses Octavia. Outside, Finn and Raven, who have not eaten the nuts and are not hallucinating, do damage control. Raven chats with a hallucinating Connor as Finn destroys what's left of the nuts. One of the delinquents walks past them crying. Finn tells Raven he's got this one. Just before she's about to walk out past the wall, Finn tells Raven Finn, I lost my spot here completely. Just before she's about to walk out past the wall, Finn turns her around. Just then, Finn spots the grounder, Lincoln, escaping the dropship. The two stare at each other, and Lincoln prepares for a fight. However, Finn lets him go. Running from his hallucinations, Bellamy realizes he is surrounded. On his knees, he begs Chancellor Jaha to kill him. Reaching behind him, Bellamy pulls out his gun. He holds the gun out to Jaha and says he deserves to die. However, Jaha slaps Bellamy across the face. Bellamy tells Jaha he can't fight anymore, but Jaha tells him that life is a fight. Bellamy asks what he is supposed to do, and Jaha tells him he needs to live, breathe, and suffer. Jaha tells Bellamy if he wants the peace of death, he's going to have to earn it. And then Jaha asks Bellamy if he deserves to be free of pain because he's going to get it. Bellamy's hallucination fades and he sees Dax, not Jaha, standing over him with a rifle. Before Bellamy can do anything, Dax tells him it's nothing personal and pulls the trigger. However, Dax's bullet is a dud. Bellamy realizes that Dax is going to kill him. Dax cocks the rifle as Bellamy reaches for his own gun, only to find it was a hallucination as well. Just before Dax can pull the trigger again, Clark appears, pointing a rifle at him. Dax and Clark point their rifles at each other, and Dax tells Clark she should have stayed down in the depot. He tried not to kill her, but Shumway said no witnesses. Clark is confused, and Bellamy says Shumway set it up and gave him the gun to shoot Chancellor Jaha. Dax tells Clark to walk away, and he won't kill her. Clark doesn't want to leave and tells Dax to put the rifle down. When Dax refuses, Clark pulls the trigger, but her bullet is a dud. Dax doesn't hesitate and shoots at Clark. Clark manages to hide behind a tree just in time. Dax continues to shoot at Clark. Bellamy, realizing that Dax is going to kill Clark, barrels into him, sending both of them to the ground and the gun in the other direction. The two get into a fistfight with Dax gaining the upper hand. Both struggle for the rifle when Clark tries to cock her rifle behind the tree. As Dax and Bellamy fight, Bellamy spots the forgotten bullet from Dax's rifle. At some point, Dax manages to get his hands on the rifle and starts to choke Bellamy with it. Clark, unable to figure out how to cock the gun, runs into Dax, planning to throw him off Bellamy. Dax, however, thrusts the end of the rifle into Clark's stomach, knocking her to the ground. Clark's distraction allows enough time for Bellamy to grab the forgotten bullet and lodge it into Dax's neck, and then Dax quickly dies after. Clark says he's okay, or she's okay, to which Bellamy says that he's not. Leaning up against a tree, Bellamy breaks down and says he's a monster. Clark consoles him, telling him that she needs him and that they need him and that all is forgotten. He can't run, he has to come back with her, and that he has to face it. Bellamy points out how she faced her mom, and Clark admits that she doesn't want to talk about her mother, and that she doesn't want to face any of it. All Clark thinks about is trying to keep everyone alive, but they don't have a choice. Bellamy thinks that Jaha will kill him when he lands on Earth. Clark responds that they will figure out something. Bellamy asks her if they can do it another time, and Clark leans back on the tree and tells him whenever he's ready. Everything seems to be returning to normal. Jasper is asleep, clinging to the grounder stick right where Octavia left him. Monty asks if Octavia had a rough night. She lies and says that her head hurts. Monty mentions that he thinks he ate a pine cone because it told him to. Miller shouts from the dropship that Lincoln is gone. The 100 begin to worry that the Lincoln will come back and that this time it will be with reinforcements. Bellamy's voice booms over the others, telling them to let them come. Clark and Bellamy walk back into the camp looking confident. Bellamy announces that they have been scared of the Grounders for too long because of their knives and spears. Bellamy says he's done being afraid. Together they will show the camp the rifles. Clark lets the 100 know that they are weapons, not toys, and that they will have to be prepared to give them up to the guard when the dropship comes. But until then, they're going to help keep them safe. Bellamy announces that there are more where those came from, that they will start training in the morning so that if the Grounders attack, they will be ready. Finn is not happy about the rifles in the camp. Bellamy tries to make amends with Octavia, but she's not interested. Clark approaches the two, telling Bellamy that it's time. Bellamy turns to leave, but asks Octavia if she helped Lincoln escape. Octavia lies to him and says that she has nothing to do with it. Bellamy doesn't question her further and then leaves with Clark. Bellamy and Clark face Chancellor Jaha through a video chat. Before Jaha says anything, Clark defends Bellamy and asks for his crime to be pardoned. Jaha explains that it's not that easy. Bellamy tells Jaha if it is, he wants to know on the Ark who wants him dead. Jaha thinks it's over and pardons Blake for his crimes, much to Bellamy's relief. Marcus Kane arrests Commander Shumway. Kane calls Shumway a disgrace. Shumway defends himself, stating that he was only doing what he believed in. Clark checks on Finn's wounds. Finn vocally disapproves of bringing guns into camp. Finn doesn't want the guns in camp because he doesn't trust Bellamy, and Clark can't predict what Bellamy is going to do. However, Clark tells Finn she trusts Bellamy. Finn is shocked to hear this and tells Clark she's wrong to trust Bellamy. He also tells her that she and Bellamy are leading the hunter down a dangerous road. Finn wishes Clark would have talked to him first. Clark, however, remarks that she wishes Finn would have talked to her about a lot of things, but didn't. Just then, Raven enters the tent quietly. Clark leaves while Raven looks after her. On the Ark, while Shumway is in prison, it is shown that Diana is the one who is pulling the strings, and she wants Chancellor dead. She then has Lieutenant Graco kill Shumway in prison cell to prevent him from talking. They slit his wrist to make it look like a suicide, and that's what ends this episode of The 100. Wow, that was a lot of talking. I'm going to give the episode a 7.5 out of 10. The character of the episode is going to be Bellamy. Did a lot of talk for kind of a mediocre episode. So you've heard everything that I have to say. Now it's your turn. If you're a fan of The 100 and want to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, please make sure that you Hulk smash the like button, share the video with a friend, put this video on any one of your social media platforms. Don't forget to sound off in the comment section about what your thoughts are regarding this episode of The 100. What would you rate it, and who would be your character of the episode? And then last but certainly not least, don't forget to hit that sub button. You're watching the video anyway. Subscribe to the channel. Help me get over 100k subs. Join the team. Show your damn support and be a part of something special. And you never know what you're going to see on JDev TV.